What's going on, Cool Betters, and welcome to the Coolbet Canada podcast, episode number 3. And as you can see, it's Pat Gregoire, it's Jake Bullen Moss, but we're missing one of our members here as Coolbet Chris is down in Sin City enjoying all the NHL All-Star Weekend festivities in Las Vegas. It must be nice, eh, Jake?
Yeah, they're calling him Vegas Chris, so must be nice.
No, he's down there taking in all the festivities, and we thought maybe we were going to get him on at some point to report live from Vegas, but he must be caught on a heater right now at a table or something. No, I'm just kidding. At the time of recording, it's only about 9 o'clock in the morning in Vegas, so he's probably grabbing some breakfast, getting ready for the big day. But the show must go on, Jake. Our guest today is Kellen Forrest of Sportsnet, and most notably for what's going on right now, Yahoo Sports Canada, as he's on the Beijing 2020 beat covering the Winter Games. So we figured we'd bring on an expert because I'll be quite honest, I love the Olympics, the Winter Olympics. I love it, but I don't know if I could be throwing out my own picks here. So we had to bring on an expert. He does a great job. It was an awesome conversation. And oddly enough, when I found him on Yahoo Sports, sent him over to you, you actually know him.
Yeah, crazy little story, actually. We're working on a blog here at Coolbet, trying to figure out some of our Olympic hopefuls, as we did for the Summer Olympics. But one thing I want to mention, too, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about this, is how crazy the turnaround's been. I came on to Coolbet in May. We did a full Olympic ride there for the summer, and all of a sudden it's February now, and we're doing another full Olympic ride.
Yeah.
Olympics don't come around like this very fast.
No.
But to get back to the story, so we're working on this blog. We want to talk about some hopefuls, display some of the odds, just a few little blurbs. And Pat sends over this Yahoo Sports blog, 10 Olympic hopefuls. I open the blog and I see, Kellen Forrest. I said, I went to school with this guy. I went to Centennial College. We were in the same class, same year. One of my good friends, actually, from that class. And so I shot him a text and I was like, give me a call. And I said to Pat, hey, we can have him on. I'm sure he'll come on and join us. And so, yeah, he gave me a call and we figured out a time and got him on. So, yeah, it was pretty small world, I guess, when you all come into the industry at the same time. It's that's how it kind of goes. So it's just one of the ways of connecting, I guess. And I was happy to have him on.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it was a great conversation. He is very knowledgeable when it comes to winter sports in the Olympics. But we also found out I found out, I should say, he is a big Rams fan. So unfortunately, I had to tell him that I've got a ticket on the Rams. So there's a good chance that ticket's not going to cash and his team won't win. But that's here nor there. But big news coming up here this week, especially here at Coolbet Canada, as we announced our new partnership with PGA Tour and Canadian Richmond Hill, Ontario player Taylor Pendrith joins Team Coolbet Canada. We're absolutely stoked to have him on board.
Yeah, huge signing for us. We knew about it kind of a little bit in advance. I was itching to tell people, but obviously keep that stuff to yourself until the pen hits the paper, the ink dries, and all that fun stuff. But super excited about this. My grandparents are big into golf. Actually, I was talking with my grandma this morning. We were talking about the Pendrith signing, and she thought it was great. I told her he's going to have the logo on for the Waste Management, which is a huge tournament. And she's like, now if I could only figure out how to bet. I tell you right now, if my grandma knew about betting two years ago, she would have been all against it. Now all of a sudden she wants to know how to bet. So I don't know what's gone on in the last couple of years, but I get in the industry and now it's a little bit more okay, So yeah, but that was a funny little story. But yeah, super excited to have Pendrith. Big announcement, multi-year partnership. Left sleeve, huge.
If grandma says it's okay to bet, then it must be okay to bet. But no, this is awesome. I'm super excited. Pendrith's a guy that, if you're dialed into the PGA Tour scene, and of course in Canada, you have heard that name. He's a a big hitter off the tee. He's an electric player to watch, and he's making noise south of the border as well, being named one of the rookies to make a biggest splash on tour, atop of that list. And if you listen to any of the podcasts or read any of the betting blogs on PGA Tour, his name comes up quite a bit for some value. So expecting to have a big year on tour, and we could not be happier to be along the ride. So look out for that Coolbet bear on his left sleeve, as Jake mentioned. So before we do bring on Kellen, we have some housekeeping here to handle. Are you doing okay? You seemed a little bit upset earlier this week when Tom Brady's announcement of his retirement came out, and there just wasn't enough praise for you New England fans. What was that all about?
Yeah, well, so it starts end of last week when Schefter releases the tweet saying Brady's going to retire. And then there's conflicting reports, and I think Darlington originally posted it, and then it was Schefter, and then there's conflicting reports. No, that's not true, and he hasn't made his decision yet. He's on vacation. I can't imagine. People are already thanking him. I was thanking him because obviously he's such a big part of my life, and it's not true. So then I'm like rolling back. I'm like, okay, so maybe he does his little spite tour. Maybe you get another year of Brady magic, and then sure enough, start of this week, he comes out and does his retirement. So I see that Schefter officially announced it. He was obviously mad because when he first came out with it, people just went right at him for wrong information. I mean, what does the guy have? One wrong tweet and like a billion tweets, and then he just gets bashed. So Schefter can never be wrong in the eyes of anyone in the public. But I mean, that's just the nature of the business, the insider business. If you want to be first, doesn't mean you're always necessarily right. So you got to be sure on these things. Yeah. And then Brady comes out, does a big Instagram post, and he's so calculated. And the more stuff you read into, the crazier it is. So he posts the post. The first thing is a picture of him in a Bucs uniform. Fine. That's where he last played. But it was the game where he played against the Patriots in that crappy weather. That's where the picture's from. So that was one thing. So he's like kind of taunting the Patriots a little bit with that. Then he's got like 7 slides of not apologies, of thank yous that he's got to go through. Thanks to Glazer family, the Arians, every coach, everyone who took a breath in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization, from the people who greeted him at the door with a smile to the people. I don't know. I don't know what the people at Tampa Bay did, but he's got a billion things to say, nice things to say about them, and not one mentions the Patriots. Not one. And it's not like he ran out of slides. I think it was only like 6, 7 slides. He had a few more there. He could have at least thrown in, like, throw us a bone, something. So nothing. People are going back to 2 years ago when he left the Patriots. Oh, he gave you a goodbye then. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know about all that. I think for a guy that spent 20 years in New England, pretty much my whole life as a Patriots fan, and then to see him not say anything. Then he releases a video today. We're recording this on a Thursday. He released a little video, obviously acknowledged it there, and talks about, he has the interview of him post-game at the Patriots where he's like, oh, I spent a lot of my life here. My kids grew up here, were born here. And I'm like, okay, now he's kind of like bringing it in. But I don't know. I do personally think it's all part of the plan. Like everything he does is all planned out. It's never just wing it. Like, he's always got something. So maybe he wanted to get people talking about, the fact that he didn't mention the Patriots. And then he does the little Instagram post being like, oh, we'll always love you. Like, we'll always have a special place in my heart, whatever he said. But it was like 12 words. He had like a billion words about the Bucs we had a cup of tea with. So I don't know. It was a little messy. I was saying some things on Twitter. This is my knee jerk. I always do that. I'm going to blow things out of proportion. That's how I am. Whatever gets the clicks, whatever gets people happy, whatever gets people laughing at me, I don't care. I'm not burning my Patriots gear, though, guys. Don't worry. My Brady gear, it's all staying. Sad to see him go, obviously. Not like for a guy that was such a big part of my life. The championships, all that, like all the controversy, everything. It's been a crazy run, and I thought to go out on top like he did, which is crazy to say because he's 44, but led the league in passing, led the league in yards, touchdowns. crazy to me. But you know what? When it's time, it's time. I'd rather see him go out on top than see him, I don't know, kind of go out on the decline, right? I don't want to bring Big Ben into this, but we kind of saw how the last couple of years went with him, and a little more sad in that scenario as it is in the Brady scenario, where he had them 27-27 with the Rams after that big comeback, and crazy we'd be sitting here. He could still be playing right now in a different world. So, it is what it is. Here we are. Show goes on.
Absolute ricochet shot at Big Ben there.
But, it's just factual. He hasn't been that great. Big Ben has had a lot of amazing years. The last couple have not been those amazing years.
Of course. I just think I was obviously kidding, but I just think it's so amazing that Big Ben, thought he retired. He'd have the Canton speech to himself, probably already had his perfect fedora picked out for when he goes into the Hall of Fame, and then Brady just a couple of weeks, not even a week later, announced he's retiring. And now Big Ben's going to be, his bus will be put to the side and barely even talked about once that voting goes. But you know what, Jake? I understand. Obviously, I'm a salty Bills fan. What that man Brady has done to me over the years, I've come to a point now where I respect him so much that the hatred, and especially when he left the Patriots, it's not like I cheer for him by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly the respect grew. I don't think he doesn't really owe you guys all that much. I can understand why, but he gave you so much. And I think he kind of already gave his last hurrah when he left a couple seasons ago. But I will agree with you. He is calculated. Everything he does is with a purpose. So I don't know, maybe if I could see why you guys are upset. I don't think it's so much of a shot at the fans, but a shot at the organization, just shot at Belichick, and kind of just how everything unfolded with his last tenure or last part of his tenure with the Patriots. But it is what it is. From an NFL standpoint, not too heavy on content for NFL today, I think, on our weekend wagers, because it is a little bit of a different slate for sports this weekend with the NHL All-Star Game and the skills comp going on. No odds posted for that at the moment, just because we are recording on a Thursday to make sure you get this into your feed before the Olympics really gets underway. But we will talk a little bit about some of the odds that are already up for football for the big game next week. But as I mentioned, our guest today, Kellen Forrest from Yahoo Sports, we had him on to talk everything about the Beijing Winter Olympics, and even gave a couple of his own long shot sprinkles. So without further ado, Kellen Forrest. We now welcome on our guest today, Kellen Forrest, who's a writer for Sportsnet, the University of Calgary Dinos. And of course, the reason why we brought him on today, he is on the Beijing Winter Olympics beat for Yahoo Sports. Kellen, how's it going, my man?
Good to be here, boys. Thanks for having me on. I'm getting ready for a few late nights here coming up with the Beijing Olympics, but I'm excited. The Olympics is always an exciting time here, so I just appreciate you guys having me on.
Of course. Well, I see you got the toque on, you got the hoodie going, so you're all bundled up, ready to go for Beijing. But before we dive into the Winter Games, we've got to talk, because I found out you're a Rams fan, so obviously you're all sorts of fired up. You'd be happy to know, or maybe not, just based off my betting history, I do have an outright ticket for the Rams to win the Super Bowl. So I will be cheering for them next Sunday. But like I said, with my gambling history, might not be on your side. But how are the vibes heading into the big game next week?
I like that you point that out, because I don't know if this is just a fan thing to do, but every year at the beginning of the season, I also put a future on the Rams to win a Super Bowl. So I'm both invested financially and as a fan. So I'm right there with you. But the vibes are pretty good. Honestly, I'm a lot more confident going into this one than I was with the Patriots Super Bowl. And we all saw how that turned out for the Rams. And maybe that's because of the competition and how the Rams match up with the Bengals. But the vibes are definitely better going into this one than the Patriots one. And maybe that's because we don't have to face off against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick this time. I don't know what you think about that, Jake. Do you think the Rams have a better shot heading into this one or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think like in terms of your competitor, definitely. Not that I want to discredit the Bengals for what they've been able to do this season, but I mean, they're not the Patriots, especially those Patriots that were kind of still buzzing there. So yeah, I mean, I like their chances. Vegas has them as the favorites, so that's got to feel pretty good. You just got to hope that kind of buying all in for this season is going to pay off. What were your thoughts? I want to ask you, what were your thoughts on kind of the start of the season? You know, you go get Stafford, you have no first round pick, no second, like no picks. Who cares, right? Because you got the guys. These big contracts for Donald and Ramsey, and then maybe it didn't start out that well. You go get Odell, you get Von Miller, and then like this team slowly starts to come together. The playoffs, like, are they hitting their stride at the right time? What were your thoughts kind of start the season to this point? We're in the Super Bowl now.
I mean, yeah, it's a good point. Like when they brought in Stafford, it was basically them saying, hey, we're going all in. And then obviously things started out pretty well. They had the big win on the opening Sunday nighter of the season against the Bears, and then they beat the Bucs early in the season. Things were looking good, but then they hit that kind of weird middle stretch where things started to not look so good. They got killed by the Cardinals. They got dominated by the Titans. Matthew Stafford seemed to be throwing a pick six every freaking game out there, right? So things started to get a little bit shaky. And then obviously, like you said, they brought in some more pieces and they really said, hey, we're going all in, right? And again, it's a risky strategy because if it doesn't work out, then obviously you're mortgaging your future and the things might not look so good in a few years. But I mean, if they get one and they're here now, it's all worth it in my eyes. I don't know how you guys feel about if your fandom and your teams, if they go all in, is getting one worth it? For me, it is, right? So now that they're there and they just got to finish the job and they have the guys, I think, to do it. And especially with how they kind of match up with the Bengals and their D-line versus the weak O-line of the Bengals, I'm liking their chances. But again, that quarterback on the other side, he's shown he's a winner, right? So it's going to be a good game, and I'm just excited for it.
Well, I think us Toronto guys too. If you think back to what the Raps did a few years back, right? They get rid of DeRozan, and everyone's like, "Oh God!" I know it's a little different basketball and football, a lot more players in the field in football, but they go get Kawhi, and then we see that playoff run and that championship run and how that all breaks down. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. As much as DeRozan looks awesome in a Bulls uniform, he's been playing MVP caliber season. I think you look back and they're never going to take that 2019 championship away from us. I don't care about injuries. That's part of the game. Like, we won a championship. The Raptors fans, I know Kellen's a Raptors guy too. They're not going to take that away from us. So I like the move. I think you go all in, and especially when it pays off, like a situation like this, you get to the Super Bowl, just got to finish the deal, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's as if they finish this one off, regardless of what they look like in a few years. Like, obviously, things might not look as good. They got no first round picks till like 2030, it seems like, right? So it's but other than that, if they get one this time, it's all worth it to me. And build some legacies, right? Like the last thing on Stafford's resume he needs, the last thing on Aaron Donald's resume, right? Just it'd be good for them, but obviously the Bengals is a pretty incredible story too. So it's going to be a good one, I think.
I'm a Bills fan, so I would do unthinkable things for a Super Bowl. Like things that I'm not allowed to say on this podcast. It would cost me my job. Let's just say that. But if you get one, I mean, and who knows? I mean, the window's really not that small for this team. I mean, they could go on a run in the next couple of years, obviously after that. But you know, even think back to a few years ago when they made it, even with Goff, like that's a part of that legacy there and McVay's legacy. So if he gets one here, gets one again, maybe next year, or even an appearance next year, like legacies are being built there. So I don't hate the move at all. Obviously, if we have this conversation in 3 weeks and they don't come away with a win, then we're having a completely different discussion. But go all in. If you can win it, then everything's worth it, right? No revisionist history at this point. So but that's enough talk for Super Bowl. We're going to talk next week about the big game and all the betting odds that you can find at Coolbet. And we're going to shift our gear now to the Olympics, where, again, you can find a lot of betting odds for the Beijing 2020 games at Coolbet. Most notably, right now, the total medals is set at 22.5, which would be 23 would be the fifth most. And this is the third biggest contingents that we've seen with 250 athletes. So I think this total might be a little bit low here, or maybe I'm just, my Canadian pride is fogging me here. But do you think we can expect more than 23 medals in this games?
I think there's a great shot that they can. Obviously, the line is set off probably the grace note. They always do a scientific prediction on the medal counts, and they currently have Canada predicted for 22 medals. So obviously that line is right around that, based off that number. But I think there's room. There's a lot of areas where Canada can surprise and bring home a few medals that they're not originally projected from. Like right now, the Grace Note projections has no curling medals for Canada, right? And obviously our curling, we struggled in 2018. We didn't win any medals in the men's or women's team events. We just brought home a gold in the mixed curling. But out of the three events, I think we get at least one. And I think there's definitely room for a couple more. Like they could all technically medal, right? Obviously Canada's quite a curling powerhouse, so there's room for them to gain some medals there. And then obviously the Olympic part of what makes the Olympics so great is you have these athletes that come out of nowhere and kind of surprise people on the biggest stage and win some medals. And I've been even looking at some of the odds. There's some couple dark horse Canadians that, yeah, they had a great 2021 season. They maybe struggled at the end of coming into the Olympics here, but they've shown they can do it on the biggest stage. So I definitely, if I was a betting man, I would be definitely betting on the over heading into these Olympics.
Yeah, certainly. It seems. Sorry, Jake. It did seem a little bit low for me, and it's also just past history as well. Like since they hosted in Vancouver, the standard has been changed, and they've become a powerhouse in the winter games. And that number 23, as I mentioned, would be fifth most in winter games, but it would also be the lowest since 2002. So for me, it just seems that the standard has been set that when it comes to Winter Olympics, they're going to be in the mix. There's going to be some top athletes competing for gold. And as you mentioned, I did not know that about the projections in curling, because if you look at the odds, they're maybe not necessarily the favorite in all the events, but they're heavy favorites to at least finish in the top three. So that came as a little bit of a surprise for me.
Yeah, and that surprised me too as well, especially because the mixed curling, they're the defending champions. Obviously, only half of the team from 2018 that won gold is back in John Morris, but Rachel Holman, his partner, was also our lead skip for the women's team in 2018. So she has that Olympic experience, right? So they're off to an okay start. They've already started their tournament actually, so they're off to a 1-1 start. But again, in 2018, they actually lost their first game, or Morris and his partner lost their first game in 2018 and then didn't lose another game, right? So they're kind of on maybe that same projection. So I definitely think curling is an area where they can surprise and win a few medals, as well as some of the speed skating and like the freestyle skiing, snowboarding. That's, if you're looking for areas where Canada can really win some medals, it's on the speed skating track, both long and short, and it's on the slopes with the snowboard and freestyle skiing.
Yeah, and speaking of the snowboard and freestyle skiing, I'm looking here. Number of gold medals, number set at 8.5, right around even for both sides, over and under. 11 back in 2018. We're talking about snowboarding, skiing. When you see guys like a Kingsbury, a Parrott, a McMorris, where do you think our best competitor lies in terms of winning that gold medal and bringing some of those in to try to get to that 8.5 number that they have it set at right now?
I mean, yeah, it's funny you say that. There's no such thing as a sure thing in Olympics, right? But as close in the world as there is to a sure thing, it's Mikhail Kingsbury, right? He's arguably the most dominant winter sport athlete we've ever seen in the world, right? He has over 100 World Cup podiums. He has 70 World Cup victories, which is just incredible. He's the defending Olympic champion. He won gold in 2018. He also won silver in 2014. And he already started. They had their qualifying run just this past day here, and he's already in first place. And the gold medal, the final, will go Saturday morning here. But he's pretty much as sure thing as they come when it comes to betting on a gold medal favorite. I know he's probably, his odds aren't probably amazing, but if you're looking for something that you can just put your money away and know you're getting a return, he's pretty much as close as they come in this Olympics, I would say.
Yeah, there's no doubt. He's an absolute wagon when it comes out to there. I don't recall. I don't know. Jake, you might remember what the odds were, but I was pretty surprised, even though you know how good he is, but it was shocking to see his odds and how, massive that they were for him to win. We mentioned some of those names. Perrott, Perot, sorry. He's a very intriguing athlete for me, on and off of the slopes. Obviously for him, he's a guy that, battled with cancer. He had to put his career on hold, came back, won an X Games medal in the same year. He's coming off, I believe, a silver medal as well. Do you think we have a chance here that we could see him or even Mark McMorris, the bigger name, potentially come away with a double podium appearance?
Absolutely. I think they both have the potential to do that, right? It's whether they can put it together and have their best stuff in both events. I know that's a very hard thing to do, especially on the biggest stage, but as we've seen, they both have the capability. Like, as you mentioned, McMorris, he's just coming off a gold medal at the recent X Games in the slopestyle, right? Obviously, it's hard to replicate that production, like in both these big events. Might be hard for him to take home gold in both, but he's clearly shown he can do it, right? And then same with Perot. He took home the silver in the big air, right? And then he finished, I believe he finished fourth in the slope style, right? So they show that they've got that podium potential, and there's definitely a realistic possibility that one of them finishes on the podium in both events, right? They both have Olympic medals already, right? That they've had in their past. So I think this is a great, when the snowboarding comes around for the men, that's where Canadians should be really looking, and we have a great chance at some podiums, and even both of them standing on the podium in one event, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and even going back to what you're saying there, Kingsbury, minus 118 to win the gold, and the moguls minus 588 for top three. So
yeah, that's the one that
shoe in for a medal. That's the guy.
Yeah,
that's a parlay piece right there.
Yeah, barring him crashing out or something, which he just never seems to do. Like there's not really a realistic possibility that he's not on the podium, and he's just so dominant that I think, and he always seems to show up at the biggest stage. So I think that's where we get our first gold medal for Canada, these Olympics on Saturday morning here.
And speaking of an event that's already got going here, I know you wrote about them in your article. Let's talk about this women's hockey team. Them and the U.S. coming in both the same odds, minus 105 to capture the gold. I think they had 3 or 4 Olympics in a row where the U.S. just couldn't find a way. And then in 2018, the U.S. did break through, beats Canada. So now we got ourselves the rivalry we always wanted in the Olympics. It's not just Canada's to win anymore. These U.S. women are ready to play. And then we see Canada come out last night and put a shellacking on Swiss. What are your thoughts on this women's team? Is it just going to be finals, U.S., Canada, and we're going to have one for the ages again, or what?
I mean, that's where it's looking like it's heading, and that's kind of where it looks like every Olympics, right? It's one of the best rivalry in sports, and it always seems to come down to the final between these two teams. And it's interesting to see because both teams played their first game this past day here, and both kind of had some scary injuries, right? So on the Canadians side, Deust, she had a big collision. She left the game. There's no real update on her. And then one of the best American players, Brianne Decker, she had a scary leg injury, and she's already been announced out for the remainder of the Olympic tournament, right? So it'll be interesting to see if these injuries really affect these teams, and if Deust can come back or not. And does this open the door for another team to kind of sneak their way in there, or is it just these two teams kind of kind of tournament to lose. I still think with the depth and the skill on these two teams, they're on a collision course and for the gold medal, but they did both suffer some injuries to key players in their opening games. So it'll be interesting to see how these teams bounce back for sure.
I wanted to go back. We already talked a little bit about curling, and well, first off, I'll be honest, slowly starting to get more and more into curling, and just being involved with Coolbet, some of our partners. You mentioned Rachel Holman. Well, we are a major partner with them. John Epping as well. But I haven't watched much mixed curling. That is electric stuff. That is impressive stuff. Really, really entertaining curling, to say the least. But I wanted to talk about Jennifer Jones. I think this is one of the more intriguing stories in the Olympics. She's back in the Olympics for the first time since 2014, where she won a gold, 47 years old. It could be a really big story here if she's able to end up on the podium, which I believe it was minus 118, but still plus 400 to win gold here. Can the GOAT muster up some magic here and maybe win a gold here for Canada?
I think she can, and it's funny you mentioned that she's the Canadian team's oldest Olympian, right? At her age, and it would be pretty amazing to see her stand on the top of the podium and maybe her last Olympics. Like, who knows with her though? That's the thing. Like she just seems to keep doing it, right? So I think there's definitely a possibility where she takes home the gold, especially just with her Olympic background, right? Obviously, you mentioned the gold in 2014. I think obviously skill comes into it, but I think experience in Olympics is a big part of it, right? A lot of these people who come to their first Olympics, it's a new environment, the world stage. This is probably as big as it comes for their sport a lot of the times, right? And the fact that she's been there before, she knows what to kind of expect at these Olympic Games. I think there's a definite possibility that we see Canada's oldest Olympian standing on the top of the podium with her team after these games, right? And especially when you look at those odds, it might not hurt to throw a little bit down on her to take home the gold, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we talked some shocking favorites on here, and there was another one that just piqued my interest when I was reading up on our different odds and stuff. It's the speed skating team pursuit women event. This team just set a national record at the end of last season, and they come into this one probably one of the other sure things to win, minus 154 to win the gold in this event. Kellen, do you know anything about this team, kind of how the event works? And if not, feel free. Don't try to talk yourself through it. But yeah, and do you know anything about this team? I know it's a team of three, some tremendous athletes. Anything you can tell us?
Yeah, I mean, again, don't know everything about their team, but obviously I know they're one of the favorites. They are always near the top of the podium in every event, and I know their star member of the team is Ivani Blondin. I do know that she's in her third Olympics. She's a 31-year-old, and she's actually one of the favorites to win the women's mass start. So she's kind of part of that team that makes them such a deadly trio at these games and at these events. And she actually won the mass start at the Speed Skating World Cup this past December. So I would look for her to have a potential to bring home 2 medals for Canada, both in the women's team pursuit and in the women's mass start.
We'll stick on speed skating, and someone who was a superstar back in 2018, Kim Bouten. She's expected to podium in the 500, but a little bit of a long shot to find her way in the 1500 meter. Do we think we could see a multiple medal performance out of her?
I mean, I definitely think she can, because she did it in 2018, right? She actually brought home 3 Olympic medals in 2018, 1 silver, 2 bronze. And obviously the 500 meters seems to be her strong suit, but I definitely think there is an area where she could, again, finish with multiple podiums. She clearly has that Olympic background, and her lead up to these Olympics has been a bit of an interesting thing. She was peaking right at the 2019-2020 season. She actually set the 500 meter world record in November of 2019. But then when COVID hit, she kind of decided to maybe take a step back. She kind of focused on her mental and physical health because she knew the Olympics was kind of coming around the corner and she maybe wasn't feeling her best. So it'll be interesting to see, because this is kind of her big step back into the speed skating world. And she's clearly shown she can be at the top of her level, but she opted not to compete at the 2020 World Championships and just focus on the Olympics instead. So it'll be interesting to see whether she can come back kind of at the top of her game and at the top of her sport. But I definitely think there's a realistic possibility where she can finish with multiple medals again.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot of favorites, like I mentioned before. Is there anyone in the article that I sent over, is there anyone long shot where you're like, oh, maybe this is a good spot, maybe a top 3, maybe not necessarily a winner, but someone you think can podium that you're probably getting some good value on the board?
Yeah, actually, I have a couple written down here, and I'll give you 2. One kind of,
let's go,
like some good odds, and then one like real long shot, but I think he's got a real good shot. So the first one is in freestyle skiing, and as I've mentioned, that's kind of an area where Canadians can kind of watch and see some medals probably, and it's Rachel Karker. So she was actually the silver medalist in the freestyle half pipe at the 2021 World Championships, and I noticed on the odds there, she's getting plus 170 to finish top 3. So I know you're getting some plus odds there, but I think she's got a great shot to be not only a bronze medalist, but a silver medalist. So at plus 170, I kind of like that value. And then the real long shot here, and I was looking it up, and it's probably one of my favorite sports to watch. I don't know how you guys feel about ski cross, but I think anything can kind of happen in that sport. Yeah. And anybody's just with all the mass chaos at the start and all the crashes, like there's a real opportunity for some long shots to kind of surprise people on the world stage. And this guy, Reese Howden, so he's a 23-year-old. He's not really a long shot in the fact that he actually won the Crystal Globe in the 2020-2021 free ski cross season, which is the overall winner throughout the World Cup season. And so he won that in the last season here. And right now he's at plus 3,000 to finish top 3. So I think there's a realistic possibility. Obviously, he hasn't maybe been, because of those odds, he hasn't been at his top form, but he's shown that he can do it on the biggest stage. He was the #1 ranked ski cross person just a year ago. So at plus 3,000, I don't know, sprinkle a little money on there, like, and watch some chaos in the ski cross. That sounds like a good idea to me.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. You know what? Before we let you go, because first off, thank you so much for joining. This has been awesome. But before we get going, there's no odds on it yet, but I think we might have to get the guys to throw this up. But we saw who will be the flag bearers on the opening ceremonies. Who would you say is your pick to potentially be the flag bearer on the closing ceremonies? So who's going to have the best Olympics out of all our athletes?
Oh, that's a tough.
Got to put you on the spot, man.
No, I know that's fair. I'm gonna go with a kind of a long track speed skater and Laurent Dubreuil. And so he actually he had his first Olympics in 2018. Didn't have the best performance there, but he's really started to peak. And if Mikhail Kingsbury is one of our sure things, I really think he's one of our sure things to reach a podium in the 500-meter long track. So it's a bit of a sprint, which is always exciting in the long track. They get moving quite fast, and he's actually in all 8 of the 500-meter 2020 World Cup events. He podiumed, right? He had two gold, 2 silver, and 4 bronze. And then when I talk about peaking at the right time, he just this past December, he set the Canadian world record in the 500-meter this past December, passing Jeremy Witherspoon's mark. And he also set the second fastest time in the event's history with a 33.77. So I really think he's peaking at the right time. He could surprise some people, win a gold in the 500-meter long track, and kind of redeem himself from his 2018 performance. And maybe that brings him, gives him the flag bearer. There's also a realistic possibility where, I mean, Kingsbury, you can't go wrong with him, but he's done it so much before. I think they usually try and give it to maybe someone who's maybe a bit of an under the radar character. It comes out of the works in the Olympics, and so that would be my pick, and also a good bet if anybody's looking for another kind of podium bet. I think look at the speed skating with Laurent Dubreuil.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm going to get working on that. We got to have odds on the closing ceremonies flag bearer. We'll see if we can get that done. Jake, anything before we let Kellen go here?
No, that's it for me. Yeah, that was great, Kellen. Thanks for coming on and sharing all that knowledge with us. I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully we can catch some a few night stuff and some early morning stuff as well for the events.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. And yeah, it's 2 Olympics in a row where the time zones are a little challenging for watching these sports, but hey, it's worth it a lot of times. It feels pretty good to watch people with Canadian flags on their chest win some medals, right? So I'm really looking forward to it. And again, thanks for having me on.
No problem. Before we let you go, just let everyone know where they can find your stuff, whether it's with Yahoo or on your social media channels as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm at Kellen Forrest on Twitter, and then for this Olympics, I will be doing everything for Yahoo Sports Canada. So look for some of our stories. We have obviously all the Olympic results and stuff coming up, but part of my role is to kind of write some of the lighter side of the Olympics, some fun stories, right? So I'll be sharing those on my social media as well as on Yahoo Canada. So look for some content coming shortly.
All righty, Kellen, thank you so much. That's awesome. We'll be looking out for that. And of course, go Canada and go Rams.
Absolutely. Thanks again, guys.
I want to thank Kellen Forrest for joining us today. I want to wish his Rams the best of luck. And of course, if you want to follow his content and what he's thrown up at Yahoo Sports Canada, you can also follow him at Kellen Forrest on Twitter. So Olympics fully underway. NHL All-Star Weekend underway when you will be listening to this, or just about to be underway. So a little bit of a different slate for us to do weekend wagers, but we already have some odds up for the Super Bowl next week. We have NHL awards relaunched for futures, and of course, there's some other things going on. So we want to throw out our weekend wagers, and maybe you're not going to be able to cash in on these wagers this weekend. It's something that maybe you can throw a little sprinkle down now, and later on you might reap the benefits. But I will say, of course, I'll stay on brand. My weekend wager is going to be in the National Lacrosse League, but we won't get to that just yet. Jake, where are we going for your weekend wagers pick for this week?
Yeah, well, we've hit the midway point kind of right now of the NHL season. Like you said, All-Star game about to take place this weekend. And when we hit the midway area of the NFL season, I gave out a few picks. What I like to do with these futures is stay away from the chalk, because there's a reason these guys are obviously atop the list. You look at some of the names, let's say Norris, for instance. Cale Makar is minus 125 to win the Norris. I would never take that pick. You're getting no value there. Makar could have an injury. He could fall off a bit. He's a stud, don't get me wrong, but that's just not where I lean. You look back at my NFL plays, I had Derrick Henry to win the MVP. Obviously, he went down. We saw that happen. But I also had the Rams when they were, I believe, second in the division. Got them plus money to win the division. They went out and did that over the Cardinals. Cardinals are frauds. We knew that. So looking at some off-the-board picks for the future of the NHL. Speaking of the future of the NHL, I'm looking at the Calder Trophy. Some big names up top. Zegras, Raymond, Seider, 2 Detroit guys, and the Anaheim guy. I'm looking at the fourth name on the list. Plus 450, Anton Lundell. This kid plays in Florida, one of the best teams in the league. Actually, I believe right now, are they the best team in the league? They're up there at least, them and Tampa. And he's been a huge player for them. A guy that you probably wouldn't even have seen on this list coming in, maybe real high odds. Well, he's moved his way up. He's now in the fourth spot. 5 assists the other night when Marchment had 6 points. He's the type of player that he's going to give you good depth points. Not necessarily a big scorer, but 16 points in his last 15 games, including 13 assists. I picked him up my fantasy team. That's how I got familiated with him. This is the type of guy that I like at a plus 450 number. from that point on, the shots get a lot longer. 30-1 Nedeljkovic, Bowen Byram 40-1, Newhook, et cetera, et cetera. So you're looking at one of these top 4 guys. I take the longest shot at 4.5-1. Anton Lundell of the Florida Panthers. It's a good team. If you see the Florida atop the standings and he's been one of their top guys all season, a top 6 guy, I mean, how can he not be in the race for that Calder Trophy? So that's the long shot I'm looking at right now. I think it's worth a sprinkle for sure.
Absolutely. I think you bring up a great point with him being a part of the top team. And I did just double check for you. They are first in the entire NHL, 69 points at the halfway or the unofficial halfway point of the All-Star break. But for me, I mean, I'll probably ride with you here and I'll sprinkle a little bit. But for me, Zegras, man, he's just like the NHL just loves him. They pump out all his crazy highlight reels. He has the swagger. He scores crazy goals. I would have a hard time. He would really have to fall off for me not to be there. But with Seider and Raymond, them being both on the same team, you kind of split the vote there. So I think if it's not going to be Zegras, I don't think it'll be either one of the Red Wing guys. I think actually Lundell does have a good shot. So I think from the value standpoint, why the heck not? I really like that. But you know what? You did say it's a value play. So, but I do see Trevor Zegras winning this. But at plus 150, there's no value there. But you probably shouldn't listen to me when it comes to my future bets for the Calder, because I, at the start of the year, thought it would be smart to bet Cole Caulfield, the odds-on favorite. I believe I got it at like plus 350. It ended up dropping even more than that somehow. I mean, I think he maybe has a chance to win a Calder championship in the AHL, but he's not winning the Calder Trophy. I'll tell you that much. So you hate to see it. That's a bet that, as a Leaf fan, I have no problem losing.
Yeah, I've got a few Habs fans as friends, including one of our guys, Thomas, and he's now rooting for the Tank. So it's fun to watch. He's always rooting for Arizona to win and Buffalo to win, and then he's always rooting for Montreal to lose. So he's rooting on the Tank. He wants the Shane Wrights, and even next year he wants the Bedards of the world, and so that's what he's rooting for right now. It's crazy to see what's happened to them since Stanley Cup final appearance.
Unbelievable. The collapse is absolutely real, but it just shows you how valuable Carey Price really was, taking them all the way to the Stanley Cup finals last year. But if they do tank and get a top player like that, who knows? They could be back in no time. And I'll be honest, as much as I love seeing them, fail and fall off a cliff, last playoffs was pretty electric playing against them. And when they're both, at the top of their games, that's the best when rivalries are. Sure, it's fun to punch down, but when two teams are at their best, that's usually the best for the rivalry. This one here that I am going to the National Lacrosse League. It should come as no surprise. I'm staying on brand for this pick. This isn't really a rivalry per se, but I absolutely love this number. It's the Albany Firewolves and the Georgia Swarm. They're going to play twice this weekend, home and home, Friday night in Georgia, Saturday night in Albany. I'm going to stick with the Friday night game, because that's what we know. We know what the rosters are probably going to look like. You're not really dealing with any wild cards, injuries, anything of that nature. So I'm going to go with under 21.5. And Albany has hit the under in all but one of their games so far this season. They're averaging right now about 8.75 goals per game, and they're still 3-2. Their defense is an absolute wagon. Doug Jamieson, their goalie, is one of the brightest stars in the league. And for me, I just think they're going to continue to chug. They're not going to put up a ton of points against a Georgia team that's improving defensively. Their goaltender, Mike Poulin, is playing better. So I'm going to take the under there. And shameless plug for another podcast that I'm on that is partners with us at Coolbet. We've also got a boosted odds parlay as well. So if you're looking for some NLL sprinkles this weekend, head over to our boosted odds parlay tab and you'll be able to find the Off the Crossbar podcast boosted odds parlay there. So Jake, those are our weekend wagers. But before we get going, we talked about the big game next week. There are already so many props available at coolbet.com. I want to get into that, but I also want to remind the folks, if you are not a cool better, it's going to take you under 30 seconds to become a cool better. And when you do, don't forget to enter promo code CAD200. We will double your deposit up to $200. Terms and conditions do apply. As always, bet responsibly. Stay cool. All right, Jake. Have you had a chance to look at some of these props for Super Bowl? What is it? What Super Bowl are we on right now?
56.
56? Okay. LVI. Yeah, that makes sense. Roman numerals. There we go. Have you had a chance to look at any of these?
Yeah, looked at a few of them. Super Bowl can be overwhelming. I actually, it's funny. I did a last year for the Super Bowl when I was still in school. I did a video on this. It's on my YouTube. It's probably didn't get a lot of views, but I sat down with a betting expert from Oddshark, Joe Osborne. Shout out Joe. And him and I sat down. We talked about kind of what you do when it comes to betting a Super Bowl, when it comes to betting on games like this. And we did talk some exotics too. Ton of exotics already at Coolbet. We're still a week and a half out. How about halftime? Look at some of the first songs, the last songs. Ton of odds there. This is one of my favorite ones. Color of Eminem's hair when he's first shown. Right now, I think we know he has brown-black hair. We saw him in that ad, the Super Bowl halftime ad that they've been pumping out with Dre and Mary J and Snoop and Eminem and Kendrick. But then so black brown minus 125, but then you got white blonde plus 143. What a look would it would be for Slim Shady to be back with the blonde hair, the bleached blonde hair. That I think that would be incredible. So I don't know if that's rumored, anything like that. I'd love to see him with the white blonde hair. I grew up on those early Eminem albums. I listened to them with my dad in the car. I know every lyric to the Real Slim Shady. It's one of my party tricks. You just sit there and just power it off. So that would be crazy for me. Pre-game stuff, we're going to have coin toss. We have national anthem timing. I don't know, Pat. Where do you go here? Where maybe not just exotic. Where do you go as your favorite move when it comes to the Super Bowl? Because it is a lot. It's a lot.
Well, my favorite move is to start the evening off with betting the coin toss. And I mentioned it on, I think it was episode number 1, maybe, or no, it was last week, how superstitious I am. I always go tails because it is a known fact that tails never fails. Apparently it has failed before a few times. And if you don't win that coin toss, even if you, at the end of the night, you look at your account and, there's not that much damage done. If you lose that first one and then maybe some of your other props aren't starting to hit, it just feels like it snowballs. So if you can get that first W off the top, the vibes are a lot better. The buffalo chicken dip tastes a little bit better. And your night is just a lot better on Super Bowl. So I love doing that. Honestly, my favorite bet is also at the start of the night as well with the anthem bet. I will be quite honest. The anthem singer who I'm drawing a blank, I'll pull it up right now. I believe it's Mickey. What's this artist's name? Mickey Guyton, who is actually a woman. So I don't know who she is. I'm going to have to do some research here. And figure out if she's sang an anthem before, time that out. If not, it's going to be a shot in the dark, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I've done some serious deep digging on anthems before to try to figure out, if it's going to be over, if it's going to be under. Some of the other exotics that I really like, obviously at the end of the game, the Gatorade shower or no free ads, the liquid sports
liquid
beverage.
poured.
Yes, first liquid pour. There you go. The sport beverage of choice. Right now, orange is at plus 215. Blue is at plus 400. So if you think the Bengals are going to win, I think an automatic bet is plus 215. If you think the Rams are going to bet, it doesn't necessarily, and this is just my stupid brain. It's like, oh, well, they're going to drink, they're going to drink blue because they're the Rams. That's their color. Same thing with, the Bengals, they're orange. So I don't know if you can see what the color of the Gatorade is, on the all 22, but you look back, there have been times where I've won this bet. There's been times where I think there was one year where they actually didn't even show the shower. And the bet ended up being a wash. This was like, I want to say it was probably it's probably a Patriots Super Bowl win, but I do recall that they didn't actually show one, and the bet ended up being a wash. So it was a push. But no, looking at some of the odds for the actual game, though, like I like Aaron Donald to win MVP at 11-1. Harley Stoffmaker, who's one of our odds makers, absolutely ripped me to shreds on Twitter for it. But the way I look at it is, if he gets a couple of sacks, gets a turnover, and let's say Stafford doesn't play great or Burrow doesn't play great, then that means Cooper Kupp's probably not playing great. Who's your next best option? He's a guy that can change the game at any point. And is he going to win? Probably not. But at 11-1, Stafford right now is plus 126. There's zero value on that. Kupp, there is a lot of value at plus 550. But how many times have we seen a wide receiver win the MVP? Edelman's one that comes to mind. But if a receiver has a good night, it probably means the quarterback had a good night, right? So Donald, it just reminds me of Super Bowl 50, his teammate in Von Miller, who, had a pretty big game for the Broncos when they won the Super Bowl. He ended up being an MVP. I could see a very similar road where he could do something similar as well and come out on top. But there's a ton out already, and I think there's going to be more that's going to come out. But we're going to have a Super Bowl special next week, and we're going to really do it. I think the whole episode is just going to be Super Bowl. We're just going to get right into it and dive into everything, the exotics, the props, the actual game itself. Oh, yeah, there's a game that's being played as well. So I'm looking forward to it. But those are just some of the plays that I like.
Yeah, I think the last one I want to mention, I know we're going to talk a lot about this next week. This is the one that caught my eye, though, big time. Post-game, first mention by MVP in acceptance speech. We know the game's going to be in LA. We know their fans are a little like they don't really show up, but you got to imagine LA crowd, they're going to find a way to get here because it's the big stage. We're going to see a lot of celebrities in the stands, and we know how expensive those tickets are for the Super Bowl. First mentioned by the MVP, City fans plus 800 at SoFi. If a Matt Stafford standing there, I mean, Matt Stafford might be a family guy, so you don't want to take that away from him. But if someone on the Rams is standing there and you tell me they're not, and they're going to hear the fans cheering and they're not going to go, you know what, I want to talk about these fans all night after they've gotten some pretty, I'd say, or even the city fans is all lumped together and they're going to be in LA. I don't hate that. Plus 800, 8-1. I don't know. I mean, something worth a sprinkle maybe. So before I forget, I just wanted to mention that City fans as the first mention. I mean, it's not too crazy far out there if you think the Rams are going to win.
No, and I will flip it to the other side. I think there's even value if this is Cincinnati that wins. Like, talking about a fan base that has been starving for success, haven't been in this situation since the 80s. Burrow, he's not from Cincinnati, but he's from Ohio, so that's his hometown state. The city itself, like I said, it's Cincinnati. It's a smaller market. So this is something that I absolutely can see if Joe Burrow wins that MVP, if Money McPherson even is to win the MVP, which would mean he's going to be the MVP, it's going to be on an under game, which I don't see happening. But if it's going to be someone from the Bengals, I could see them thanking the fans in the city as well. So plus 800, man, I absolutely love that bet as well.
Yeah, why not? Why not? It's a Super Bowl. Why not?
Exactly. Exactly. Little sprinkle, dip the toes in, and sit back, relax, enjoy the game. Who are we kidding? You'll be sweating the whole time, whether it's from your bets or the meat sweats with all the spread. Before we get going, Jake, I gotta ask you, what's your go-to Super Bowl dish? Like what is the thing that you're loading your plate up on the most?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate you mentioned the buffalo chicken dip because that's exactly where I would have gone with this question. Before you mentioned it, my mom makes a killer buffalo chicken dip.
Love that.
I don't
Love
know.
that.
Are you a scoops guy or I'm a scoops guy personally when it
Yeah,
comes
you
to
have to go scoops. You have to
Okay,
go
so
scoops.
yeah, I'm scoops with the buffalo chicken dip. My mom also makes a really good pulled chicken, so if that's on the menu, definitely some pulled chicken sandwiches on those little buns that you have like Thanksgiving. I don't know if you know the ones I'm talking
Oh yeah,
about.
I know
Those mini
exactly what
buns.
you're talking about.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
with the pulled chicken on it. Oh,
Yeah.
you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's where I lean. I'm a chicken guy, obviously.
Yeah,
You?
I mean, I think buffalo chicken dip. If I'm, building my plate, that's going to be my first round target that I'm going to try to build my franchise around. You can't go wrong with wings. You get good value there. It's hearty, fills you up. If you got a platter going, you might have a couple of different flavors. But I would have to say those would be my two choices with the buffalo chicken dip. A pulled pork, you mentioned pulled chicken. Pulled pork is usually pretty bang on as well. But those would probably be my best bet. And I know one of our listeners is listening right now. I won't give away the name, but all-time worst take. Buddies and I had a draft of best Super Bowl foods, and quesadilla was one of his top picks. Quesadilla is fine. It's fine, but it's like drafting a kicker in the first round. Just going
Yeah,
to
I
leave
mean,
it
it's
at that.
it's the Super Bowl, not Cinco de Mayo, right? So
Hey, I
I'm
mean,
not
to
too
each his
basic.
own, but that's just that's not my. I'm not going to build my team around a quesadilla. I'll put
Wouldn't
it
be
at
me.
that. No, wouldn't be me either. But as I mentioned, Jake, Coolbet Chris not here this week, enjoying himself in Vegas. But next week he will be here. He will be on the show, and we will have a special guest as well, breaking down everything, and I mean everything, with the Super Bowl, the Rams and the Bengals squaring off at SoFi Stadium. But until that time, remember, you can go to coolbet.com, check out all the odds, props, and much more. If you're looking, casinos, not a great option around Canada right now. You can always head to our live casino at coolbet.com as well. So for everyone here at Coolbet Canada, he's Jake Bowen-Moss. I'm Pat Gregoire. And of course, Chris Abbott down in Vegas. We want to say thank you very much for tuning in. And until next time, as always, stay cool.